Holly Johnson just might not go down for first-degree murder. And her attorney, the woman I call the queen of reasonable doubt, might very well be the reason why Holly walks free. Welcome back to Naja News. I'm your host, Naja Hall.
Hey, it's Naja News. It's news you can
Whether
use.
you've already chosen a side, your justice for Romeca or free Holly, you're going to want to watch today's episode. Not only are we digging deep into the person representing Holly Johnson, but we're also looking into the prosecution's case and some critical moves they need to make in order to secure some sort of conviction. Some people focus on the defendant, some people focus on the victim, and some people are just focused on the chaos online. But in high-stakes cases like this one, the lawyer matters more than most people realize, and the seasoned observers know this. The attorney is the fulcrum. Listen, in the court of law, it's not always about who's telling the truth. It's about who can tell the most convincing version of their truth. Did y'all catch that? The woman representing Holly Johnson is someone a lot of people are underestimating. Her name is Ari Williams, and today we're looking at her playbook, her style, and why she might be uniquely positioned to dismantle a first-degree murder charge without ever needing to prove innocence. Before we get into the law, let me address the elephant in the room. And this elephant keeps appearing. Y'all be wilding in my comment section. The comments be wild. Some of y'all are like, oh, Naja, great reporting. And some of y'all accuse me of taking Holly's side. Stop. I'm not here to pick sides. And unlike some of your faves, the vloggers that you might follow, I don't befriend the people involved in active investigations, period. You've seen my other videos and you've met my mentor, Steph Watts. Shout out to the true crime OG. One of the very first things that Steph taught me was to set very firm boundaries. Because once you start befriending the family or the accused, you lose your edge. You compromise your ability to be unbiased. And it becomes hard to state an opinion that they don't like because suddenly you feel like you owe them something. I've kept myself free and clear. And look, I'm just invested in this case as you are, but I'm not putting my emotions into the outcome. I don't talk about what should happen based on my feelings or yours. I'm telling you what can happen based on the law, evidence, and precedent. Look, I ain't for everybody, but for those of you that want to dig in more to Miss Ari, let's get into it. First, let's talk about how and who Ari presents herself to be. She's a self-proclaimed vlogger and a decorated criminal defense attorney. On social media, she presents to be a baddie, I'm not gonna lie. Designer labels, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, and she's certainly not afraid to show off her shape. She's not what the system has our minds trained to think a serious attorney should look like. And most people will tell you if you want to beat your case, hire a Jewish lawyer or some big fancy law firm. But Holly chose Ari, or maybe because this is a high profile case that will put Ari in the spotlight, she could have very easily reached out to Holly's people. I don't know. Ari isn't just an attorney, she's building a brand. Her brand says, I want to win and I will poke holes in their case. Now let's talk about her foundation. Ari earned her law degree from DePaul University College of Law, a Chicago-based institution deeply connected to the city's legal ecosystem. This is important because when you practice and train in the same jurisdiction, you just don't learn the law. You learn how their courtroom culture actually works. And you really get to know the judges, the clerks, and the other lawyers. Before law school, Ari earned a master's in social work. We love an educated queen. And we can't overlook the fact that social work training teaches you how systems fail people, how trauma presents, and how fear shapes decision-making, how escalation happens in real life and not hypotheticals. When you combine that with criminal defense, you get an attorney who just doesn't argue statute. She's gonna argue context and probably even pull out some of that social work training. Ari's gonna dig into traumas and how it can trigger a rational person to commit an irrational act. She knows exactly how to humanize clients that the world has already decided are victims. I took a look at Ari's Instagram and her history, and let's talk about some of the previous cases that she's gotten some people off of. So in this post, Ari says, a police get a call of narcotics transaction, no description of a person, no description of a car, no evidence of a hand-to-hand transaction, nothing. So then she goes on to say they asked her client to get out of his vehicle and he refused. The police pulled him out of the car, searched the vehicle and found over 100 grams. And in another case, Ari fights for this man's life. It looks like her client is happy for aggravated unlawful use of a weapon and he was facing 3 to 14 years in prison. She got him found not guilty. They found the gun in his trunk. He was the only person in the car. He was the driver of the vehicle. He was the owner of the vehicle. And he said that he shares the vehicle with someone else. There were no fingerprints found on the weapon, no DNA, nothing. How can they prove that he knew a gun was in the trunk? Once again, technicality, Ari found the holes. Y'all see where I'm going with this? Now, if you go take a look at her Instagram, Ari has all these happy clients that she's gotten off of their cases, and she's basically saved their lives. Now, not everybody's happy, and I did find a negative review, and I'm just going to preface this with the thing with negative reviews. You don't know if it's a troll, another lawyer, or just some sort of hater. But I'm going to read this so that you can also come to some sort of conclusion, because not everything's all good with everybody. So, Sweet Streets says, Ari is not the lawyer she portrays herself to be on Instagram. She's a lawyer who cares more about her purse and clothes. She did not communicate with my husband about his case. She basically read the police report and went with that. Her team didn't watch the body cam footage at all. She knew nothing about the case until I pointed out everything. Basically went from telling my husband that she can beat his case to telling him to take the time after she collected all of my money. The prosecutor had her sold and no objections were made. She was not an advocate for him. You can never get in contact with her or meet with her and her team. They don't answer questions that only an attorney can answer. But if you miss a payment, she'll have her team to call you 100 times. I personally know 10 other people who recently had her and stated the same thing. This person goes on to say she's a terrible attorney. She only works hard for people that she knows or that her baby daddy knows. Before you choose her, make sure you look around for other attorneys that will advocate for you. Oh, and she gets all her bad reviews deleted to make it seem like she's the best lawyer. So go take a look at Ari's Instagram, and she even has a YouTube page. So go take a look at it yourself so you can get to know the person that is behind this case. I really do like to learn more about the attorneys representing the accused, because that tells me what type of case they're going to run. And a lot of these attorneys really come up off these cases. Johnny Cochran is a household name now. Robert Kardashian is a household name now. There's all these attorneys that have represented people in these high-profile cases, and they started just like this in local cases. So Ari is a different type of attorney in the fact that she doesn't walk, talk, act, or even present like those traditional tightly wound ones, but she might be onto something. And I will say this, I like the fact that she's showing duality, that you can walk in court, represent your client with your full bust down, go get your makeup done at MAC, go out and buy a bottle at the club in the evening, and still do your thing. So let's get back to the facts and let's get back to this case. I'll call Ari the queen of reasonable doubt because she understands the real secret to winning. She doesn't try to prove her client is innocent. She tries to prove that the state is uncertain. And in Illinois, the burden is 100% on the prosecution. They must prove intent, knowledge, circumstances beyond a reasonable doubt, and if even one of those elements cracks, the case is weak. Ari doesn't swing for emotional sympathy at all. She swings for precision. She's precise. She looks for the gaps and inconsistencies and the assumptions and the overreach. And then she stays on those things real hard. If you've seen her in action, especially in these press conferences, she's really good and meticulous about answering and not answering particular types of questions. Now let's talk about the why. Why did it take all this time to charge Holly? And why is first-degree murder so hard to lock in here? So we got to talk about Illinois accountability and felony murder law. For years, Illinois had one of the broadest felony murder rules in the country. If a death occurred during a felony, intent don't always matter. But then that's changed. Under modern Illinois law, especially the safety reforms, the prosecution has to prove direct accountability, not proximity and not you were just there. The intent to promote or facilitate the crime matters also. And this is where Ari Williams is going to spend a lot of her time, especially in this Holly case. She's probably going to argue accountability, and she's going to argue intent. She's also going to argue reaction versus premeditation. Now, let's keep this in mind. In the state of Illinois, the prosecution does not have to prove premeditation, which really works in their favor. But based on how Ari works, she might show chaos, fear, escalation, and self-defense, and even an imperfect self-defense. She can move this case out of first degree by doing what? Creating doubt. I'll be linking the Illinois jury instructions in the description. And if you're a nerd like me, go look at section 5.03A. If there is a gap somewhere in this story, Ari is going to park a truck in it, or one of those Birkin bags she got, allegedly. So let's talk about the state's key witness in this case. Ari is not exactly going to say the witness is a liar, but she's going to focus on those headphones. You all know that the witness admitted to wearing headphones at the time they claimed to have saw the incident. So what can headphones mean? They can maybe mean that your attention was divided, your hearing was impaired, and you have a compromised perception. And again, Ari really doesn't need to destroy this witness's credibility or their character. She just needs the jury to hesitate. She's probably going to ask emotional questions like, can you take a woman's life away based on the word of someone who might not have fully heard or seen what happened? That's reasonable doubt. It's going to get real theatric in that courtroom if this case goes to court. Oh, and people love to say, but there's video. But the video isn't an eagle-eye view. Videos are about angles and frames and perspective. And if the shooting itself isn't captured, which we haven't seen so yet, or if the moments leading up to it are missing, that creates doubt. And Ari is going to remind this jury that video does not think. It doesn't interpret fear or intent, and it does not explain panic from either of the parties. And what it doesn't show matters just as much as what it does show. So let's talk about the defense and the game a lot of defense attorneys play. You see, the defense just doesn't win in one day. They win through pressure. And Ari is known for applying pressure through motion. And when I say motions, I mean motions that are going to drown an entire legal staff. Ari understands paperwork. Sis understands deadline. She understands how many moving parts there are in the state's case and how much they have to juggle at once. So every motion forces a prosecution to stop, respond, research, file, and defend their own work. It's not just about the argument, it's about the time and attention and exhaustion. Muhammad Ali used this same tactic to tire out his opponents, right? Basically what I'm saying is motions create distraction. Motions expose loopholes. And motions force the state to put their cards on the table early. So let's talk about the hearings. Hearings are where Ari tests the state before the trial. This is where she gets the prosecutions on record, and this is where she locks in testimony. It's also where she watches how confident or shaky they really are. The hearing part isn't really about winning in that moment. It's about gathering information, spotting inconsistencies, and creating a paper trail so she can come back to it later. Every single answer given in a hearing becomes something that can be used or weaponized down the line. And then there's these procedural challenges. This is where it gets kind of uncomfortable for the state, or it can get uncomfortable for the state. Procedural challenges aren't flashy. They're really surgical and kind of boring. They'll ask questions like, did you follow the rules? Did you meet the deadline? Was this evidence handled correctly? Was this witness properly disclosed? Was the filing timely and complete? And if the answer to any of this is no, then the consequences can be really serious. Not only will the jury be prejudiced, but it might lead up to a mistrial. Full testimonies can be restricted and entire arguments can be weakened or thrown out. This is why I keep saying the defense doesn't win in one dramatic moment. They win by pressure and patience. And in her previous cases, Ari has done both really well. And the cases don't always fall apart in trial. A lot of them collapse before the jury's even sworn in. This isn't Ari's first time doing this. She has a pattern. In some of her other cases, we've seen aggressive pretrial motion, witness credibility dismantled, and prosecution forced into uncomfortable positions. Now, if the prosecution, the state of Illinois, wanted to predict and maybe get ahead of Ari's tactics, all they need to do is study her case history. Lawyers show you exactly who they are through repetition. Something to think about. So no, this isn't about if Holly took Romeca's life. We know she did. This is all about understanding that she hired the queen of reasonable doubt, and Ari just might sprinkle that all over the jury's minds and the prosecution's case. It certainly won't be the first time she's played this hand. The next hearing is January 7th, and we're gonna keep watching this courtroom. And now that we've seen some of the prosecution's hand and we know Ari's playbook, what do you think is gonna happen next? Make sure you stay tuned because I'll be here reporting whatever happens next. I'm Naja Hall. Thank you so much for watching Naja News, and I'll see you down below in the comments.